So today's interview came a bit of a surprise to me, actually. I never thought when I started the podcast, I'm going to be talking about toilets and the power they have actually to make the world a better place if we actually think about using them maybe a bit different and actually start thinking about the water usage and waste there is on a toilet. And actually, funny enough, I actually worked with toilets before in my career. Way back in McDonald's, we changed a lot of toilets to save water. But this technology we're going to talk about today is very different and might make some of you think is that actually an opportunity for us to rethink how water usage is done in our toilet facilities, in our hotels, or whatever kind of operation you're running. So, welcome to the show, Mark. You reached out to me because you are on a very unique journey, and I'm very excited to have you on the show.
Thank you, Michael. Delighted to catch up with you and have this chat with you this afternoon.
Mark, can you talk a bit about your journey and why you suddenly ended up with a little solution that could maybe transform water uses in toilets?
Well, Michael, it started, I worked, I'm a civil engineer. So I'm a chartered civil engineer, and I worked originally in the waste management industry. And then I worked for a global environmental consultancy company called Golder Associates, which has sadly been bought over by a larger company in the recent years. And for 5 years, I was the managing director of that company in the UK and Ireland. And we had projects all over the world. So I was asking people to go to various hot, allegedly dangerous countries, quite different to where they were from, to participate in mining projects, oil and gas projects, whatever, all sorts of different things. And through that work, I got the opportunity to travel, to follow up with some clients in different countries. And I went to Saudi Arabia, to Jordan, to Kuwait, to Israel. And it was actually in Israel where we were working for the state water company. And over a dinner with a few of their engineers, I was asked, how much do you pay for water in Belfast? Or I'm in Belfast in Northern Ireland, Michael. And I said, actually, I don't get a bill. It's included in my property tax, which it is. And I said, all right, okay, how much is it? And I had no idea. I had no idea, which is not unreasonable. I'd never been sent a bill and I'd never asked for it, but I didn't have a notion what the actual cost of the water that I was consuming. Same for our business, our office. We didn't get a bill. So I had to go back out to Israel 6 weeks later, and I thought, I'm going to know the answer to that before I go. I need to be able to give a better answer than the first time round. So sort of as a bit of homework, if you like, I looked into water consumption, water usage. What was I using? What was it going to cost? And I was genuinely shocked at the volume of water, obviously average, that each of us use in this part of the world, of the order of 150 litres per person per day.
Mm-hmm.
Most people will tell you they use 20 or 25 litres of water, but actually they're using fast, quantity more than that. And what was really shocking was the amount of potable water. I mean, the water quality we have here is incredibly good, but basically if it comes out of a tap, it's potable water basically everywhere. And I realized, or I calculated, the numbers say that on average, an individual will go to the toilet to pee 7 times a day.
Mm-hmm.
The average flush volume average is 7.5 litres, which is 53.5 litres of perfect potable water used every day of my life and your life to flush away 1.5 litres to 2 litres of urine. 25 to 1 ratio. And that just really hit me as a, amazingly terrible sort of calculation to do. So I had the Wizso and the idea of Wizso a number of years ago. Of course, you don't do anything about it. at the time because you've got other things going on. And it was only really with lockdown 4 years ago, April 4 years ago, that there wasn't much happening. Everyone had a bit of time in their hands. And I went to the local university here, Queen's University, Belfast, to ask, would it be possible to get some research done to develop a little Wizso sort of prototype tablet? And I put the idea to the local sort of business development agency, Invest Northern Ireland, and they said, oh, we can give you a grant to do that with the university. So during that sort of lockdown period, sort of April to September, Queen's came up with, the instructions were quite simple. I was looking for a small fizzy tablet that would release a colour and a fragrance that would mask any colour and odour in the toilet bowl to allow you to not flush. So behavioural change at its sort of core, but it's a very simple little tablet, environmentally benign. It's not a treatment because that would simply duplicate what happens downstream. So it's a little nudge to say, actually, Michael, you could use an awful lot less water and still not really notice any particular dramatic change in what happens in your own home or in your place of work or in your hotel room, very importantly. So I connected with a colleague, a former colleague of mine who's an accountant, who is an accountant, and I ran this idea past him to get his thoughts. He's a pretty straight-talking guy, and I thought if he bursts out laughing, he's going to tell me I'm nuts, and this is not a good idea. Mm-hmm. But he just went, I think that's a brilliant idea. What are your plans? How are you going to do it? And sort of quite quickly, we came up with a bit of a plan for Wizso as a business. We registered it. We went through all those steps, got ourselves some email, put a bit of money into it. Each of us put in some money, and we started basically from the ground up. Michael, we had a little prototype tablet. We had to take that a bit further and develop it further. We had to find manufacturer. We had to find. We wanted to patent it or try and patent it, which is quite difficult because there's a lot of fizzy tablets out there, so a patent might be quite tricky. So we just started from the ground up and started to develop Wizso as best we could. Then we thought about raising some money, and we did a first round of investment with, I suppose you would call it a friends and family round, but there were also a couple of people that obviously weren't friends or family at that time who've invested and just thought that, first reaction was this is definitely a terrific idea. And then just started, not quite pounding the roads, but just trying to get people interested. We talked to a number of UK water companies. The reaction was incredibly positive. The first, I'll remember it as long as I'm about. I spoke to a gentleman in one of the UK water companies, and I had my slide deck ready and thought I'm trying to do my best to convince this guy. And he just, second slide, he just says, Mark, I completely get this. This is a brilliant idea. We trial it for you. Now, that's his job. That he is in the water efficiency sort of customer engagement side of that water company. But that was really positive to hear that. Completely get it, love it. Maybe he would because that's what he does. But still, and talked to a couple of other water companies, and they basically said the same thing. We've had different trials. Maybe we'll come into those later on. But so when you get some money to be able to allow you to go and do that, we worked with a terrific sort of branding marketing company who helped us with not the name, I sort of picked the name at the very start, but they helped us with our logo and our colour and all that sort of stuff. And, it's been great fun working. It's not something I would have done before, basically, in my engineering job, getting involved in that. So it's just good fun, Michael. We've moved things on. We've recently completed a second investment round, which allows us to go through our sort of final product refinement stage, if you like, and early sales. We you'll be able to buy Wizso shortly online. So we see a channel direct to consumer, but we really see the main sales in Wizso will be B2B. Businesses that have ESG commitments, obligations, expectations on the people who want to report an improvement in certain things. And from hospitality is just absolutely there, right for it. I think water is probably the biggest challenge for water in terms of their that industry's environmental performance. We've had some really good connections with hotel chains, and one guy, I remember the conversation, he just said, well, we'll make money by providing Wizso for use because the company down the road won't. People will come to our hotel because of Wizso, because of our environmental performance on the back of it, when our competitors may not do that. So that was a really encouraging thing early on. And basically what this sustainability director says, we've done the LED lighting, we've got PV panels on the roof, but the biggest challenge we have is water, because that comes down to people and how they treat it and whether they understand it or whether they don't.
Yeah.
So that's probably where we're at the minute. We have carried out quite a few trials that have been great, but that's how it started. Michael, an idea, being embarrassed with a question, and then just a little bit of research, and then, let's do it. Let's give this a go. So,
it's funny sometimes how I've seen that in business I'm involved in. You get a question from a customer or somebody that's a stakeholder, and then suddenly the clarity gets to you that something needs to be done by this, or it's a different way to do it. And I think it's really interesting that, how quickly people just nodding, because the first time we talked, it didn't take me very long to say, this is solving a massive just costs within hospitality businesses, because like water was one of the things I always found very difficult as an operations director to really be in control of. And this was especially a connection with cleaning and food preparation, where there's so much water waste. I know we're talking about a different solution here, but this is also, I can just see this in a hotel context or in an office environment where you have lots of people coming through during the day, where there's a lot of flushing going on. If you go to the toilet, let's say you go to the toilet 4 times at work, it becomes a significant amount of water. So, but one of the things I wanted to ask you, and actually didn't think about before you said, why actually the name Wizso? What is the story behind that?
Well, I don't have a brilliant answer to that. A whiz would be a slangy term for going for a P, in a whiz. And I thought, well, there's a couple of Wizz Air. There's obviously an airline with double Z. So I thought change it slightly and have ZSO, which is just not immediately obvious and takes a little bit of thinking. If you were trying to spell it out, it takes it. We have to sort of recognize it and try to get the ZS in there. So we stuck with Wizso. We went to these branding marketing people, and they said the first logo that I'd sort of come up with and asked someone to develop, they said, Mark, you can keep the name, but that logo's going. We've got to start from scratch. So it's been Wizso from day one. It's been no expert answer or no professional advice, Michael. It just sounded like a half decent name with a bit of a slangy aspect to it.
Yeah, and it gives sense. It gives sense when you talk about what the use case is. So do we actually, because one of the things that is interesting when you look at this, and I think it's probably not something that's talked about if you don't go and seek the information. Is there actually a crisis around water? Because there's we talk about shortage of food, we talk about shortage of power, we talk about shortage of every kind of thing right now because of, we went to the pandemic, and that was the first time we have felt shortages in modern time after the war.
Well, I mean, I'm in Ireland, right? Which is, we say there's only 2 types of weather here, Michael. It's either raining or it's about to rain, generally. Mm-hmm. So this is a wet place. And yet, a dry week in June, there's a hose pipe ban. basically every year. It's a water stressed region because what's actually happened in Europe, if you like, let's pick Europe or UK and Ireland. The amount of water that each of us use every day has basically doubled in the last 60 years. But there hasn't really been any infrastructure investment in terms of major reservoirs. We're still dependent on what the Victorians built, if you like, across the UK and Ireland. So that's caused a huge amount of stress. Then you've got climate change, right? You've got water being a very regular news item for the last couple of summers. Reservoirs at their lowest. Here's a village that was flooded when this reservoir was built in the 30s. That's a pretty standard news item nowadays. I saw it on BBC there, another one in Spain. So there's all sorts of those type of things. It's much more current. It's much more regular on the news. And then if you look at different places around the world, major cities have had terrible water crises in the last couple of years. Cape Town, Rio, West Coast America. I mean, the whole Colorado River basin feeding Los Angeles and San Francisco. But that's a major issue. The Lake Mead is at its lowest, for 60 years. All these sorts of things. If you're into it, you can see all sorts of information that says that Barcelona currently, one of the great European cities, is in water crisis, importing water by the boatload from other places. So it's there. If you see it, people will be familiar with it. People who are getting billed will have seen their bills going up. Water companies are charging more on an annual basis. In America, it's gone up by about 6% a year over the last 10 years. The UK, there's a major price review ongoing, PR24. The water companies are asking basically to double the cost of water over the next 10 years. So it's not my word for it. It's just there. And yet a lot of people would still be quite insulated from it. They turn on their tap and they get perfect drinking water. So everything must be all right. But if you're involved in it as you were in a previous role, you understand the cost of it. And once you read about it, or if you follow it at all, you'll see that there are definite pinch points and water stress regions that there's a good chance you're living in a water stress region. Most places in Europe, certainly in Southern Europe, Southern UK is quite a water stress region. Scotland classifies itself as a water stress region because of the influx of holidaymakers during the summer. It's quite puts big stress on their network. Will the tap stop flowing? Probably not in most places, but the risk of that, or the pressure on the water system, is definitely dramatically more serious than it was even 5-10 years ago.
Yeah, and I guess, because I actually think people are concerned about a lot of things, and there's a lot of things to be concerned about. It's a troublesome time, and I think it's just another thing to think about. But actually, I could remember I watched the documentary. Actually, I went in a couple of days ago because we were having that conversation. I didn't watch all of them, but I think I found 3 just about Googling very quickly on Netflix, if you call that, or searching on Netflix, about water. And there's different ones, and there's a reason, I say as well, that big companies are buying up areas with high water density in, because it's like gold, because they know there's going to be a restraint on this, and therefore, it's going to be a very big thing. So I guess also what you're trying to do is just a corner of that, because there's so many things that has to come together. There's new infrastructure that needs to put in place, there's new reservoirs that needs to be built, because there's definitely a lot of rain that came down here in the over the winter. So it's about how do we capture all this rain and actually use it in some kind of effective way. That's a different conversation. But what is the mission of Wizso in all this? What would you like to see happening now? Because I guess you are on a journey that is an interesting journey, because it seems like it could be good business, but it could also make huge impact, I guess, across the globe.
I think, it's about living more sustainably. Michael, as an individual, it's not that easy for someone to change what they do from one day to the next to live more sustainably. Okay, it's not that easy. Whereas this is a very tangible, in your hand, calculable. It's a very easy to calculate benefit in terms of I've avoided 3 or 4 flushes a day. That equates to leaving. The crucial point, Michael, it's about use avoidance. So if you use a Wizso and don't flush, you're leaving that flush volume in the ground, in the borehole, in the reservoir. Okay? You're using that, you're avoiding its use completely. And so from that, there's a carbon emission reduction. So it doesn't have to be pumped, it doesn't have to be dosed, it doesn't have to be treated on its way to your home. And then post-flush, again, it doesn't have to be pumped, aerated, treated, dosed. There's a saving in chemicals. All of those things are avoided when you don't use the water. So there's an environmental benefit of leaving it in the ground as well. Okay, a biodiversity benefit. But then there's the financial benefit. If you understand it in any way, some people will think the financial thing is the bigger issue. But in the UK, an average flush of a toilet is about 2.7, 2.8 pence. That's the total cost, water delivered and wastewater treated. Again, it's an easy thing to calculate. If you get a water bill in the UK, you're told what the rate is per cubic metre delivered and the rate for wastewater treatment. So you can calculate that to a 7.5 litre flush. The other thing that water company reports in the UK, I'm not sure what it would be like elsewhere, they also report on their energy mix. So different water companies have different energy mixes, which means you can say some of them are more dependent on fossil fuels, some of them are better with AD or whatever. Obviously, that's a trend that's going to improve over time. But you can actually calculate reasonably closely what the carbon emissions are per flush. Again, average scope 1 and 2, probably about 8 grams, 7 to 8 grams. When you add in scope 3, you could probably double that. Okay, so you're able to come up with a very reasonable carbon assessment. You're able to come up with an absolute financial saving. And you've got the environmental benefit. And importantly, for a business, this is a real engagement opportunity. This is putting something into the hands of your colleagues or your visitors or your staff or your customers and saying, if you now here's some information about water, we're providing Wizso for use in our hotel rooms. You might want to save it. You might want to participate, or maybe not. Not everybody's going to do it all the time, but it's a little nudge. It's a little, you now understand the issue around water. You've probably read about it in the paper or seen it in television. Here's a chance for you to do something about it. And it's putting something into your hand, basically, that allows you to participate and have an actual, a tangible output from it. So I think that's really helpful. Behavioral change. Behavioral change, Michael, is about 3 things. So again, the theory of it is, if you want someone to change their behavior and give them some education, inform them of the why, inform them why they need to change it. Okay. The second thing is build intent. Get them to commit to something, get them to say, oh, okay, I can see that. And then the third thing is make it easy for them.
Yeah.
And if you say, here's Wizso, it's available, what do you think? That's when you get, that's when people participate and find it easy to change their behavior. It's not necessarily a straight line. You can use a Wizso and flush and go, oh, I forgot, that happens. But from some of our trials that we've completed, we've seen that the longer people have Wizso, the more the behavior gets baked into it. And they're avoiding more flushes in weeks 3 and 4 of a trial than they were in weeks 1 and 2. Because it does become a norm, it does become a habit, and there really isn't a downside from it. I mean, why would you not?
And it's quite interesting. When we had our first conversation, I actually been trying to educate. We don't have tablets at home, but I thought we are at home, we all know each other, so
Right.
let's just reduce it to every second or third time people go to the toilet. And actually, it starts to work at some point, but of course, also I've been policing it because I found out we had two of the toilets are quite old, and I found out the water amount of them compared to our new toilet is doubled the flush, you know.
Yeah.
So I'm creating a small own real life experiments at home, because that's definitely something we're in charge of. Like, we don't leave the tap on when we brush our teeth and all those, you know, and only short showers and all that. But it would be really interesting to hear some real life examples of with Wizso. I don't know if you actually been able to do any hotels or anything now, or workplaces like in bigger scale, but it'd be interesting to hear about whatever your learnings has been from a savings point of view, what you could expect, you know, because if you have a small trial, it's just a question about scaling it up, I guess.
So I think just going back to the hospitality, and you said it there about at home. So at home, a family, again, after being locked down together for a couple of months at a time, it's quite easy. It's really easy to adopt Wizso at home, okay? The second easiest place is probably in a hotel room. You know, me and my family or whatever, my wife, husband or whatever, in an hotel room, it's just like being at home. So hospitality should be a very easy place for Wizso to be adopted for that reason. Slightly more difficult will be a place of work. You know, I know my colleagues and we all, you know, but it's just a wee bit trickier, certainly in the early days compared to being at home. And then the fourth area, if you like, which will take a bit of time, but which will ultimately happen, is the sort of coffee shop, quite random. You know, I don't know anybody who's following me or been in before me. So those are probably the four areas of where Wizso will be adopted. What we've done to date, Michael, again, working with some of the UK water companies, one of the water companies, Southern Water, took Wizso and they gave it to 40 of their staff. Okay. And they also gave them a little gadget, a little Danish-made sensor called an Aguardio sensor, which is a flush counter, essentially. So it Bluetooths to your phone. Every time there's a flush, there's a change in temperature, and it picks it up as a flush. So all of these staff members had a month of baselining using the Aguardio sensor just to count the flushing. Then they gave them Wizso, and they counted the flushing for the next 4 weeks. Now, they didn't just give them Wizso, they explained what Wizso was. So everybody was engaged with the understanding of the result. They were all trying to save water. The savings in the trial, for the whole trial, were 30% reduction. If you look at the second half of the trial, again, when the behavior is more embedded, the results were nearly 30% reduction. So the usage graph tailed off quite dramatically. Again, completely independent of Wizso, calculated by Southern Water themselves. So it was an independent trial as far as we're concerned. Another water company in England, a company called Affinity, which is a supply-only company. There are companies that just supply water, and then there are companies that supply and treat. But anyway, Affinity's supply-only. Very engaged with their customers around water conservation. And they did two things. First of all, they gave Wizso to 1,600 homes. 1,600 households got Wizso, and they surveyed them twice. So we went from sort of 40-ish, 50 families trialing Wizso in the first few trials to 1,600 households trialing it. They got results to the surveys for nearly 800 of them. And they're absolutely terrific. Michael, you know, again, you're giving it to people who are participating and they understand it, but they really like Wizso. They feel it's a good thing to do. They understand the crisis. They want to do their bit. The second answer that they gave, the second most common answer as to why did you use Wizso for the trial? Wizso helped me do my bit for the environment. I'm able to do, I can't always get the bus. I can't cycle to work. I can't do all these other things, but I can do that very easily. So that was a brilliant piece of work that they did. Again, third party, the research was done by a third party. But then, and this final example without boring you is again something that Wizso was used in another trial by Affinity as part of a wider Ofwat, which is the UK regulator funded water neutrality study.
Mm-hmm.
And they gave everyone some information in this particular area, this town. Take shorter showers, turn off the tap when you're brushing your teeth, that type of thing. They then called to their door and said, "Hey, Michael, did you get the letter we stuck through your letterbox?" And he said, "Yeah, I did. Thanks. I'm going to give it a good go." And they said, would you sign a pledge on behalf of your family members? Right? So that's, if you think about what I was saying earlier about change behavior, inform people, build intent. So some people said, all right, I'll sign that. Everybody at number 26 is going to, we're going to try and do our best here. And the people that signed the pledge, would you try Wizso? This is something in your hand. This is something that you can help you save water. And again, the results were all third party captured and recorded. The people that got the information saved 27 litres of water per day.
Mm.
The people who signed the pledge, a bit more intent on their part, they signed the pledge, they saved 33 litres a day. And the people that took Wizso saved 51 litres a day, which is a 65% improvement, which is a third stage, if you like, of the behavioural change, model. So that's final report is coming out from Ofwat in the next number of days. But that really affirms what we're about. We want to make it easy for people to, to do it. We final example. We always thought that it was a generational thing. I'm in my 50s. I can get it. Or, people who are older are going to get it less. But we worked with a purpose-built student accommodation provider in Belfast. Okay. And we had, I think, 110 or 112 participants in this particular student block. Absolutely loved it. Completely understood it. Completely got it. Environment, it's their issue more than mine. Feel like, as you go down the age groups. Brilliant feedback. And, again, really affirming that a younger generation, that demographic, are going to pick these type of things up a lot quicker than, in terms of who we market to and where we aim our social media. We think that's been really useful. Keen to do more of these types of things, Michael, still. We want to corroborate some of our studies. So, and then we've successful with the system operator in the UK on a research project, which is to do what Southern Water did in the home environment in 4 non-household businesses. So we're going to do the same thing using the same sensors to try and see if we can get a non-household business, 4 different businesses, and have 4 sort of independent projects that we can look at individually and wrap up collectively to see if we can have an impact on the non-household, which is the terminology used in the UK. So we've plenty to do. Yeah, it's interesting times. Ultimately, we want to get away from these little flip-top dispensers to button operated. So to go to public spaces or an hotel room, it'll be a dispenser fixed to a wall, as you would expect, soap or hand cream or shampoo or whatever. So there's quite a bit in that, actually, coming up with your own dispenser that works for our tablets at our size and getting it to look right. There's quite a piece of quite complex. So we're doing that, and we're just trying to run in parallel. And when we have that finalized, we'll be selling Wizso to the masses for anyone who's interested at Wizso.com.
But what I think is really interesting from the first time we talked about, you started talking about this behavioral change, and then you're right about the 3 steps. Actually, what often fails is to make it easy.
Yeah.
There's lots of people that come up with a strong why you should do something and say, oh yeah, I buy into that. I'm going to do that. And then, you can also have the intent to do it. But then if it's not easy to do,
Right.
and it really becomes a hassle in my life,
Right.
it becomes hard to adapt behavior. And then, there's only the extremists that's going to go and do these things.
Yes.
What are some of the typical, because it seems like you solved the holy grail of behavioral change. You actually get people to do this before you go to market. You have all the evidence. What is like some of the critical questions that comes when you talk with potential customers or companies or organizations?
Well, I tell you, the ones that we thought were, will the use of toilet tissue, if there's a bit of tissue in the bowl, will that put people off? Like, will that put women off more than men? And we thought that might have been a huge, maybe not a fatal flaw, but we thought we're going to hear a lot of this, this from our trials. This is going to come back. And while it has come back a little bit, it actually hasn't stopped anyone from trialing Wizso. It's people, you're making a decision to do something different, and you're accepting that it's a bit different. Therefore, that doesn't become a big issue. So that's been quite quite an interesting one. The other thing we did, Michael, was we had some focus group research done, again, completely independently of Wizso by an expert company in that area. And they talked to different groups of age group and always flushers versus an eco-friendly people and all these different people to try and discern just what was going to work for people. And what came back was actually, because Wizso has a sodium bicarbonate aspect to it, it actually has a cleaning aspect. So people said, oh, actually, when I use Wizso, I use less toilet cleaning products because it leaves the toilet very clean. So we had people avoiding the use of chemicals and cleaning products because they were using Wizso, which was not something we'd in any way anticipated. But that's quite a nice little, surprising answer. Another sort of collateral benefit, if you like, from using it. Lots of people say we'd love it in a dispenser. So, we knew that from the start, but we just had to start somewhere. So that's been good. And we sort of put that to one side and say, well, that's what we'd have. And more people, well, what would we say? While the environment and the carbon savings are sort of there and fairly obvious, I don't think if you don't have the financial saving, you're not going to get there, really. You know what I mean? The financial saving is a real hard return on investment figure that should be able to get anybody over the line in terms of trying Wizso at home or certainly in their place of work, Plus the ESG, but for a business to be able to report, the holy grail, Michael, for us is for a business to provide Wizso for use, but in time to say, actually, we're going to provide it to our staff for them to use at home with their families. And the business then claims the benefits of that one-to-many relationship in terms of bigger volumes of water and bigger amounts of carbon avoided. Does that make sense?
It totally makes sense. So what is the, it seems like you're just on the cusp of something potentially go very big. So what is like, if I'm sitting and listening to this, and this was typical, as we talked about, will be operators, business owners of hospitality businesses across the UK and the rest of the globe. When can I expect actually to trial, maybe even implement this into my business? Well, what is like the timelines you're working with now?
Well, there's a sort of a process. So for a business, success for us for a business is for a business to implement Wizso successfully in one location. Okay? Do it in one location. Learn how it works best. Refine the communication that you use, refine the voice that you use to connect with your colleagues and your staff and your customers. And whenever you have the numbers and the results from that one location, you're there in a better position to expand across your other locations. So it's not buy Wizso for every hotel in our chain. Do a really good, successful rollout in one first, and from that develop it. So that's how we see the B2B happening. We're on a bit of a cusp. So we're in what we're calling our phase 2 stage of Wizso, which is refining the product, a few more trials, and then we raise more money to do a really significant launch, hopefully on a global basis. But when it comes down to the conversation, Michael, with people who you're going to raise a chunk of money off, they want a lot of evidence, rightly so. So we do want to have more trials completed. We do want to have a second and a third, maybe student accommodation trial done, so that you can say, it's not based on a one-hit wonder thing. You've got real sort of depth to the work we've done, to the trials we've done, to the customers we have. We want to get our dispenser finished, and then it's a question of making Wizso available on a subscription basis, direct to consumer. So you'll buy Wizso hopefully for your family online, and you'll get a second packet of Wizsos to top up your dispensers in 3 months or whatever. Businesses, it'll be a direct B2B sale, and a walkthrough for the early stages of the first location. To make sure that people are capturing the right data and are putting the project together properly to be able to justify, to be able to demonstrate the savings in terms of water and money, and then that'll help you justify to take it wider into the organization.
What can I expect from a cost level as a business owner? Because again, you always compare, I need to do this, has a cost compared to my savings, I guess.
Well, Wizso, again, on average, Wizso will give you, Wizso will be half the cost of a flush as a headline. So if you use one Wizso and avoid a flush, you get 100% return on your spend. Not very big numbers, right? You got to use a lot of it to have an impact. But that's basically the pitch, if you like. It's at or about that number. Again, from the research, maybe more from the students group research, but people are using one Wizso for slightly more than one flush avoidance. Maybe 2 Wizsos to avoid 3 flushes, or 3 Wizsos to avoid 4 flushes before it's flushed. So at greater than 1 Wizso to each flush, slightly more flushes per Wizso, the return on your spend goes up very dramatically from that.
Yeah, so there's like a compound impact almost
correct,
of this.
Exactly. So the financial pitch is a very easy one in terms of you've got to buy it up front and you've got to provide it, and it's only on a per use basis do you get the saving. The dispensers aren't particularly expensive. It's not a huge capital spend for for anyone or for any business. It's so many cubicles. It only applies in cubicles, Michael. Obviously, this is no use for urinals. As you'll appreciate, it needs a body of water to fizz in.
Yeah.
But for a number of euros, a few euros as a one-off cost for the dispenser and a top-up of Wizsos on a monthly basis, you're going to see it double at least what you spend on it. So, attractive from a financial point of view. And again, it's not a massive, you're not going to the bank manager to justify the project in the first place. It's a relatively small amount of money on a per room or per customer or per staff member basis,
Yeah, and it's not putting in whole new toilet cubicles.
No, absolutely not.
It's a very different expense, as you say, when you have to go and justify that.
Yeah, it's no plumbing of any sort. It's a stick-on. Initially, the dispenser will be you'll be able to stick it onto the wall. Wouldn't ask anyone to screw it on for the first trial, but ultimately it'll be like any other dispenser in a hotel bathroom.
Yeah.
The crucial thing, sorry, Michael, is the information card that goes with it. It's not on its own. Again, here's the education piece. Here's 4 points as to why you might participate and why you might use Wizso, and then that's over to the person.
Yeah, well, I think also that's really interesting because as a business owner or you're looking for solutions that can help me actually tell that I care about the environment. I'm trying to do something. And again, this is again something that makes very clear you're acting, you're not just talking, you are acting on behalf of the planet, because you're putting something in place that actually helps straight off.
It's a two-part thing. So let's say the hotel operator is acting in doing that. Well, it's over to the customer for them to act. You're providing it, you're making it available, and then it's over to the user to either participate or not. Again, totally private decision. Michael, it's a personal, private decision on every case in the privacy of your own suite or wherever. So there's no compulsion to do it, but whatever the uptake is in the first month in a hotel, it'll only increase after that, because it'll become more familiar and people will understand it better. And then, the next time they stay there, oh, I'll do that this time. I didn't do it the last time. So it's education, make available, educate, and then it's over to the person to see if they want to participate,
A couple more questions, Mark, before we end the conversation. What is like your, when it comes to give a good advice to other leaders? Because you're definitely building a business as a force for good, in my view. You're building something that can really change behavior to the positive end. But what would be from your journey, what would be an advice to other business leaders out there that is trying to make more impact in the world?
Well, I think just to get going, you can't do it on your own. I certainly couldn't have done this on my own. I was delighted to get the involvement of my fellow director, and for his, to help with business, finance, whatever it might be, a sounding board before we, you just can't do it on your own. You'll not get too far. Go alone. What is it? Go alone, go deep, go together, or whatever, so find a trusted adult that you can work with who's going to add to the team and help you with the stuff that you don't know. I think that's absolutely crucial. And again, I just think routine, every day, try and move it on just a wee bit. You will get setbacks, no doubt about it. Raising money is incredibly hard.
Yeah.
Raising money is hard. You think you get there and people who are, let you down or change their car. Oh, I forgot about it. There's all sorts of, we've been probably friends, family, and a few high net worth individuals in our second round. But still, it took a lot longer than we thought would have happened, So that's tricky. You gotta be tenacious. You gotta take a no from people and not let it bug you. You can't be precious. And it's not for everyone. Investing, asking other people for their hard-earned money is just tricky. But the other thing I would recommend, if you're going to do it at all, communicate regularly with the people who've invested. So we make a point of a quarterly update, warts and all, for the people who have invested in us. And I think having invested in a previous company, a small startup, who don't do that, I think it's appreciated. People aren't expecting, Apple quickly. We're not going to be Apple or be listed anytime soon, but the very least you can do is keep in touch, inform them, and be completely frank in terms of the good, the bad, and the ugly, I feel like, in terms of what you're doing. I'm sure that's not news to you, Michael. You've heard that 100 times, but that's a definite truth that works. Your people will be quite forgiving if they know exactly where they're at,
Yeah, and then they know the risk they are.
Of course they are
taking part of. It's an investment, and therefore it's connected with a lot of risk, especially in the early days. And that's also why, you're when you're in on high risk, there's also high reward potentially. But I think it was really interesting, the thing you said, because this is something I've been focusing a lot on myself over the last couple of years. There's been troubles in time, and I've been writing and thinking a lot about and interviewing people on this. And you talk about that ability to show up. and just continue. And it always takes longer than you think. Even if you put in the buffer, it's going to take longer than the buffer. So I love that advice. What is that one question you wished I've asked you today, Mark? I didn't ask you. What would the question be, and what would the answer be if there's anything?
Okay. Well, what sort of coverage might Wizso have in 4 years' time?
Good question, yeah.
So I, again, at the very start, and I said Wizso's either going to be quite big or non-existent. It's not going to work for a very small number of homes or a small number of hotels. It's either going to be quite a significant, potentially global product. Don't see why not. Could we get to Heinz baked beans level and have it in every home? I don't know. Do you have Heinz baked beans in Germany, Michael?
I think they have. I think they are probably everywhere. They're probably all over the world because it's Unilever. So.
Yes, of course. I'd love Wizso to be synonymous with doing your bit to live sustainably.
Yeah.
The Hoover word of living sustainably. Could Wizso be that name or that word that people use? So that's a bit rose tinted, but that's why not? You got to think anyway. You might as well think big.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much, Mark, for coming on the show. If people want to connect with you online or I want to know more about this, I want to get involved, how do they do that?
Well, email Michael in the first instant, Mark at Wizso, WIZSO.com. And I'd be very happy to have set up a call with somebody and give them the full Wizso story and see if there's anything to be done after
that. We will put that in the show notes, and we will also put a link to the website so people can find you, ask more questions, maybe even ask, can we try this out in some kind of way? So I send you, Mark, and the team power and energy on this very exciting journey of trying to change the way we use our toilets for the betterment of our planet. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Michael. Really appreciate it. Cheers.